12 universities from across Zimbabwe have assembled here at this arena of intellect. 4 of them have already been eliminated, and now we have half of the remaining 8 ready to battle it out. Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome. This is the semi-finals of the SASI debate, proudly brought to you by SAYWHAT and supported by the Swedish Embassy in Zimbabwe. My name is Miss Jones, and I am your debate mistress. Joining me today on stage are 4 prestigious universities. Teams, please make yourselves known, starting from podium 1 all the way to podium 4.
Hi, I'm Tari from Great Zimbabwe University.
Hi, I'm Fian from Great Zimbabwe University.
Hi, I'm Nombulelo from NAST.
My name is Aden from NAST.
My name is Tandokuhle Spanda from MSU.
My name is Tabiso Spanda from MSU.
My name is Michelle from Women's University.
My name is Mpatso Tanganyika from Women's University.
Now that you're well acquainted, welcome aboard. Let the games begin. This debate will follow the British parliamentary style. The rules are, each participant will be given exactly 4 minutes to present their case. Points of information are allowed. However, if your POI has been denied, you have to wait for exactly 30 seconds before requesting for a second opportunity. With that being said, the motion reads, this House supports the degrowth movement. This House supports the degrowth movement. The motion has been stated. Prime Minister, please take center stage.
Panel, in this today's motion, we think it's important, first of all, to characterize what status quo looks like, and we think it's also important to address why it's actually a problem that needs to be addressed in such an extreme manner. We think that status quo is characterized by things such as consumerism, capitalism, the drive for profit, which only benefits a few people on the globe, whereas the majority suffers. And we think that at the end of the day, efforts that have been put in place since time immemorial have been ineffective because of lack of that radicality, that will to hold anyone accountable regardless of who they are, and stop the demand for produce, which is also going to stop the supply for these certain things, right? Which in turn is something that is currently harming the globe and the climate at the end of the day, right? We think this is something that needs to be addressed as a matter of agency, and we think that is something that we can't keep waiting and pushing forward and say, okay, fine, we're going to support the mediocre activities, the mediocre policies that have been put into place, which have since failed to make some impactful change towards the positive change of the planet, right? And the protection of human rights and everything else that we value as a world, right? But then we're also going to talk exactly about what support looks like from the opening government. We think that support goes beyond just vocally saying that I support a certain movement. We think that it also looks like advocacy and protesting against certain policies that are said to be implemented, or certain projects that are said to be implemented, which are for profit seeking and don't benefit the society. Right? For example, we've seen that a lot of indigenous communities across the globe have been displaced from their communities in the name of profit and development and promise to get compensation, but then at the end of the day they suffer, right? Whereas these communities before those proposals and projects were indigenous and self-sufficient and were able to live a sustainable life that valued the continued existence of their community and their source of livelihood, right? Panel, what we bring to you today as Team Opening Government, we say that we support the ideals of a movement, right? When they're morally, principally, and socially justified. That is to say, when the world, to us as Opening Government, the world matters more. We don't think it's a matter of saying that we're going to stop production in its essence, right? We're going to stop industries from functioning. But we're saying we're putting less prioritization on the idea that we want to be fully consumeristic or we're going to be fully capitalistic. But we think that we need a drastic change in order to change the way of life, right? Why do we think this is important? Why do we think we value the ideals of a movement, regardless of whether or not there's going to be a large majority of buy-in, or whether or not there's not going to be buy-in, right? We think that as an individual, when you stand up for what you believe in, right, that is what matters most. We think that the fact that there are 53 political parties currently competing within the South African elections, right, where we know that only 4 have a real chance of competing and the rest are just here to fill the spaces, right, but still they're going to get a certain amount of votes. It shows that people are still determined to stand up for what they believe in, and this is something that we value as team opening government, right? But then we also tell you about why we think that we don't really care about backlash that is going to get from like the big economic corporations, right? And we don't think why we think that is a trade-off that we're willing to make. We think that all social movements that exist for something that they believe in, right, they are bound to face backlash. They are bound to face sort of all of those things, right? But then we say that we're not likely going to change the projection of this movement, because we believe that it's a movement that is unfazed. It's a movement that puts emphasis on a radical change and addressing the root problems that are harming the globe and the humanity as it exists, right? We think that in this debate, it's also important to recognize that the world as it stands, right, status quo, only benefits a few people. The people that own the industries, the people that don't really care about the environment, and the people at the top, the billionaires, keep getting billions and keep making billions, right? We tell about the examples of people in Saudi Arabia, right, that own all of those oil mines, right? We say that in a world where we say we're going to practice growth and development of technology and all of those things, right, it's never going to be implemented, because those people that hold power in the world are never going to say, okay, fine, let's stop mining oil in order for us to make billions, right? And let's use these electric cars, which everyone can use in society, right? We think that at the end of the day, we're not going to be able to achieve anything if we keep letting those people get away with those things. And we think this is what this movement seeks to achieve, right? But then we tell you exactly, and this is something that needs to be engaged on critically within this debate, right? What world best saves the continued existence of humanity and the planet? We say environmental factors affect social impacts as well as economical ones. But the fact that in status quo, economical factors have been, economical things, right, the GDP, have had more prioritization over environmental factors, which affect the day-to-day lives of people. And that's why we are more than proud to propose. Thank you.
The Prime Minister has spoken. Now let's hear what the Leader of Opposition has to say.
So if there's one thing that the opening government has managed to do, is to make this debate very simple for us. Because the one thing that they come and cry about is how capitalism is bad. But at the end of the day, they fail to show to us how at the end of the day, that very same capitalism, if it's removed, that element of capitalism, how then does it benefit in the fight against climate change? This is what we're going to tell you as side opposition. We come and tell you that there are certain things that we need to look at in this debate. Also, they should have read a bit of the info slide. Because we come and tell you that human beings are self-destructive in nature, right? What does this mean? This means to say that no matter what happens in the world, people will always thrive to push boundaries, to do whatever they want to do. And because of that same very nature, they fail to show to us how de-escalating production, they fail to show us how de-escalating production at the end of the day will solve other problems. If today's fight is climate change, tomorrow's fight will be HIV and AIDS, tomorrow's fight will be wars that exist in society. They fail to show to us how at the end of the day, not dealing with the nature of human beings is going to somehow solve the problem. All they think about is, let's eliminate money, therefore we can solve climate change. Secondly, let's show to you how in this current state, it's not practical to degrowth the economy. We come and tell you that we are in 2024 for crying out loud. A generation or an era whereby we have cutting edge technology that we are using in the fight against climate change, which they mentioned nothing about. We come and tell you that we have discoveries that are better equipping people in preparing for the future. They show to us how at the end of the day, in their side of the debate, they solve the debate. Let me make this very simple. Thirdly, we believe that given a case whereby we've de-escalated production and we're in a state of low GDP as they fight for in this debate, we come and tell you that when you characterize a country that is ravaged by low GDP, we come and tell you that in African countries, the citizens can't afford a loaf of bread. Citizens don't have employment. How then do you expect that particular person to join the fight of climate change? How do you expect that particular person to contribute something meaningful towards the fight of climate change? Thirdly, we come and tell you that when you look at countries that are ideal in terms of the high GDPs and that are also ideal in the fight against climate change, we come and tell you that countries like Germany, which have the resources, which have the funds, which have the GDPs and the capitalist people who are helping the fight against climate change, we come and tell you that they have managed to open industries, they've managed to do away with diesel engines and open factories that prioritizes electric vehicles. We come and tell you that we have Germans companies that reward people for recycling. Those are the things that we would like to see. Let's use that money that we get from our GDP to pay people to incentivize in the fight against climate change. We'll come and tell you that why is this necessarily important? Why is growth necessarily important in this debate? We'll come and tell you that growth in a country such as, in a continent such as Africa, emancipates people from the mentality that we have. Right now, when you graduate and get a job, the first thing that you think of is buying a house. The first thing that you think of is buying a car, the very same car that is contributing to climate change. We come and tell you that mindset when you go to Germany, they are moving from buying cars and joining public transport. People are walking towards. That is the change in perception that is brought about when people are able to live fully, to the fullest extent, with the money that they're saying is so bad in this situation. What have we shown to you in this debate? We have shown to you that in our world, in our side of the debate, we would believe that when people have enough funds, when people are fed, when people have jobs, people can then focus on these things that matter most, rather than saying capitalism is so bad, therefore it's only a few people who benefit. We tell you that those same people, when they open industries, when we tax them, that same money we're going to use it for projects that then aid in the development of our nation and the continent as a whole. That is where they fail to bring to this debate to show how, at the end of the day, degrowth is going to solve climate change.
That was the leader of opposition stating his case. Deputy Prime Minister, the floor is yours.
Here is what is problematic about the case that opening opposition just brought to this podium. First, they base their case on the whole conception that as a government, we are trying to arbitrarily remove capitalism or degrow the economy. But as a government, this is not what we seek to do. We believe that this motion brings in a comparative analysis where we are saying that the growth and prioritization of economic policies and GDPs are being done at the expense of humanity and people. And he posed a question why growth is important, and we're going to address this as our case moves forward. Panel, what we'd like to address first is the nature of our status quo that is characterized by consumerism, capitalism, and the motive to make profit. What do we think is wrong with the status quo? We think that efforts to save the planet and attend to its urgency are disproportionately little at the moment as compared to the ever-growing urge to maximize on profit, to consume, and to maximize on economic growth. We think it's worse because prioritization of GDPs and other economic policies does not guarantee us anything at the end of the day. And the problem with the status quo is it's insatiable. It's a beast that keeps on feeding. Who benefits from our current status quo? You see, the obsessive drive for economic growth and GDP and profit making only benefits a small part of people who yield economic and social power and control everything at the expense of everyone else. And we are really not addressing the global issues. And this will only widen the income equality gap as the business and industry personnel will be controlling everything, getting richer by day, whereas the poor people and the middle class are remaining static, and this will just increase social inequalities and bar people from accessing equity. Here's why we think it is important to support the degrowth movement as a movement, and here's what support looks like to us. So to support goes beyond just the vocal endorsement of this idea or of this movement. We're talking about advocacy, we're talking about implementation, and we're talking about education around why it is important to prioritize human life, to prioritize sustainability at the end of the day. And we think the values of this movement are correct, and they encourage equity and emphasize the importance importance of striking a balance between humanity and development. Moving forward, we think that who buys in and who does not budge at the end of the day, insofar as pertaining to this idea, does not matter, because we are still going to support the ideas that it represents. We have movements that have 2 people buying it, but what matters is the support that we are going to give. And we think that all movements begin small anyway, but what matters is the support that we're going to give and the reasons why. We think that prioritizing economic policies like the GDPs at the expense of the environment and the livelihood of people will sacrifice the planet, which is at the end of the day the ultimate source. So why are you growing the economy and killing the planet? How do you plan to use all those funds that you're so willing to acquire at the end of the day? And one thing that we need to address, especially in line with the case of the opposition, is not all growth is good growth. We have examples of mining companies taking away property rights from indigenous people in the name of growth and development. The major problem with what opposition is vying for is the underpinning profit motives that want to keep on taking and don't have the decency to assess or when to stop. With this, we've never been proud to propose.
The Deputy Prime Minister has spoken. Let's hear what the Deputy Leader of Opposition has to say.
Basically, when we're looking at this whole debate as a whole, we come and tell you that still, the government still failed to propose what we mean when we're talking about the degrowth movement, and also looking at how the low GDP is affected. We come and tell you that GDP has a guarantee. GDP has a guarantee of employment. GDP has a guarantee that when people are employed, they have money, and they are able, therefore, to buy electric vehicles. They are able, therefore, to change perception in their minds, whereby they are told that you do not really need to use cars with fuel, but then you can use public transport to take you to schools and to take you to your workplaces. We come and tell you that practically we're now at a point where we can solve the damage that has been caused over for 2.5 centuries, all in the name of degrowth. We come and tell you that we have reached a point of no return. We tell you that degrowth movement could have worked when there was no climate change, where the ozone layer was not depleted, where there was no economic instability, where people were not dying of these diseases that were brought about by the climate change. We come and tell you and bring to you closer to home, and we tell you that let us maintain the population that we have instead of degrowth. We tell you that the climate change has reached a climax where nothing has really been fixed and solved overnight because of this degrowth movement. We come and tell you that my partner is here already enlightened about and deliberated about people's self-destruction in nature. We tell you that, and despite of what happens, even if we degrow, climate change will still be looking at you in your face. We tell you that we come and tell you that we need to solve identified problems instead of degrowth movement. We tell you that let us increase production, which will generate more income, which is needed to deal with climate change. Then this will lead to a relatively high GDP. We give you examples already, as my partner has stated, about Germany, who are the biggest drivers of electric motor vehicles, and they already have a high GDP. We tell you that they have eliminated carbon monoxide that is brought about these cars that we are driving in our days with fuel. We come and tell you that the carbon monoxide has already been contributing to greenhouse gases, which have led to the climate change. We come and tell you that there is also use of public transport and bikes in these European countries, where people use them to go to school and go to work. Therefore, carbon monoxide is eliminated. And we're telling you that there is no more contribution to the greenhouse gases that have led to climate change. We come and tell you that we feel like the growth leads to emancipation. We tell you that the first thing in Africa everyone thinks is when they get a job and they have everything got it. Even everyone in this room, if you were to ask them what their dream was, they'll tell you, after I get money, after I make millions, the first thing, I want to buy a luxurious car. Everyone came here driving. But then one thing that you are failing to understand is that we are still contributing to carbon monoxide and the greenhouse gases, and climate change is still there no matter what. So we come and tell you that with this in closing, we debate and we close our debate and style and say that no to the degrowth movement. Let us look at the major causes of climate changes, the effects, and how to fund so that this climate change issue can be fixed. So now, how can we fund for this climate change issue? That is the question that needs to remain in our minds instead of the degrowth movement. So vote against this degrowth movement and let's look at the future of how to effect this climate change revolution. With this, we've never been proud to oppose.
And that was the Deputy Leader of Opposition representing the opening opposition. And now we shift the debate to the Member of Government. Please take center stage.
We automatically win the debate over opposition once we prove to you that the degrowth movement can actually bring about some kind of change and help reduce the effects of climate change. Important context that's missing in this debate. There's a very significant difference between economic growth and economic development. We think that economic growth has a primary focus on things such as output and things such as income and does not at all consider things such as welfare, things such as the environment in and of itself, and consider holistically improving the quality of life of individuals as a whole. And this is why we think that it's important for us to halt it because, first of all, it's happening in a model that is not very sustainable. We might find ourselves in a place where people that are poor keep on getting poorer and the environment continues to degrade itself and we end up like dying because of diseases, right? But more importantly, what does this degrowth look like? We think that it looks like waste reduction. It looks like reducing things such as consumerism and not producing more than what we require or more than what we need as individuals, first of all. And it looks like not using more than what we need. If we have one house, there's absolutely no need for you to have two. If you have one car, there's absolutely no need for you to own two at the end of the day. So we want to portion things and make sure that we don't produce more than we can consume or we don't produce more than we need. But why is this something that is necessary? We think that another important characterization in this debate is for us to understand how dire the situation is. We think people are dying at a much faster rate. We think that fish are dying in the sea. We think that your uncle there in Murewa is probably depressed right now because of the current drought that they are facing. They are forced to look for other means or alternative means of raising income because the only way they know how of doing it is through subsistence farming and cattle ranching and things like that. And also the other important thing in this debate is for us to understand that the rate at which the climate crisis is increasing is too fast for us to catch up. We think that the gap between the damage that we're causing and the solutions that we're trying to propose to solve that damage is too far wide and we can never keep up with it. But secondly, we need to understand, like opposition already tells you, that we can never trust human beings to make the right decision. We have more than 3 active wars in the globe, and this proves to you that human beings are very much irrational, and at a point at which they are to choose between the environment and themselves, we think that they'll always choose themselves. At a point at which they need to choose between being the #1 global leader in terms of economic growth, they will choose that over making the right decisions that would essentially preserve the environment. So in as much as they could be capable, like they're saying, of being innovative and finding creative means of solving the environment, we think that when push comes to shove, they will never make those particular decisions at the end of the day. So we think that this type of economic growth, this model that we're using, is that type of thing that leads to extinction because of the gap, the problem-solution gap that exists at the end of the day. But why is this trade-off something that is necessary? We think that it's important for us to pause for a second and give ourselves time to catch up even with the economic growth, because we think that there's a lot of unforeseen outcomes that come with these things that we were never prepared for. So we need time to think them through and work towards catching up with the damage that we already created at the end of the day. I will also talk to you about things such as equity. They briefly mentioned it on opening government, but you hear it more clearly from us. And we also need to talk about why we don't really like economic growth like that. First of all, we think that it perpetuates things such as inequality, because richer countries continuously get richer, and we think that when they get richer, the poorer countries continue to get poorer. So developing countries will never at any point gain some kind of bargaining power to continue to improve themselves and grow themselves. But secondly, we need to also think about how economic growth in and of itself worsens the quality of life and the standard of living of individuals, because it perpetuates things such as inflation. This is why you find people now having to work 2 or 3 jobs just to make ends meet, because of how expensive living has essentially become because of this economic growth and because of the increased output and the increased levels of income at the end of the day. So from our side of the world, it's better, even if there's always going to be a problem in the world, but from our side of the world, it's better because by halting some of these things, we at least give ourselves a fighting chance to catch up with the damages that we've already caused.
We can never trust human beings to make the right decisions. The member of government has spoken, and now we'll leave the floor open for the member of opposition.
Ladies and gentlemen, development and growth are intertwined, interconnected, that one cannot separate them from each other, as they both contribute to the innovative ideas that can be used in addressing climate issues. Indulging in growth is like taking one step forward and 7 steps behind. As my fellow delegate has mentioned, about mental illness, you're just diverting from the grassroots, but not completely eliminating it. Wow. As the opposing closing government, we believe that the proposal for degrowth is neither a solution for the ecological crisis nor for the shortcoming of democratic capitalism. Most importantly, degrowth has been criticized that it's proposed to reducing the world's material footprint or carbon emission significantly enough to avoid an ecological overset. This is because after the gross democratic project, ladies and gentlemen, of rich economies are downsized, let's say by a significant 40%, there would remain a footprint of 60% and 60% of their economies to decarbonize. Most of 63%, ladies and gentlemen, of carbon emission come from the developing countries, where it will only continue to increase in the foreseeable future. So we firmly believe that degrowth is not the solution to the problems that you are facing. Let's talk about the GDP. It is not the enemy. Hence, if we have degrowth, we are affecting it instead. It is politically, economically unrealistic in the sense that we are reducing the competitive power of the companies, the same companies that are helping other countries to develop and that still developing. Degrowth is only feasible to developed countries, but it makes the developing poorer. Instead of pushing for degrowth, we should advocate for green methods to achieve. For example, the use of electric cars that has been mentioned by the opposite party. I would like to firmly believe that instead of advocating for degrowth, ladies and gentlemen, people should just live the unnecessary lavish life they want to live. That is affecting the sustainability of the environment that we need to use in the future for other generations, ladies and gentlemen. A further shortcoming of degrowth is that if one considers degrowth as a method to decrease carbon emissions, it is much more expensive method than currently comparable to technology investment of degrowth. Ladies and gentlemen, as we proceed to firmly disagree on the fact that we should be involved in degrowth in degrowth movement, it harms the developing countries because of intertwined nature of the global economy. This might be disproportionately have the poorest of the poor and make matters worse. A degrowth might turn out to be dirty. One reason is that countries will have fewer resources to invest in climate change, mitigation, and adaptation of technology, leaving them more vulnerable to the impact of ecological deterioration. Therefore, we should bring forth the growth movement, which will bring technology advances such as the use of green and clean energy, which can only be brought into the equation by introducing growth in technological advancements and not degrowth. By this, we say thank you.
That was the member of opposition stating her case. Now we'll leave the floor open for the member of government, the government whip.
Madam Speaker, from the first half of the debate, what we mainly get is from team opposition government. They tell us about the principle and morality, right? They tell us that we should apply this degrowth movement, right? So that it's morally correct, and by principle, we need to fix all the damages that we have already implied, right? They need to get it from team opposition, right? They come here and tell us that African countries are poor, right? And by slowing down development, by slowing down growth, right, we are making them poorer, and the people within those countries, right, they won't afford to buy alternatives, this and that. We tell that degrowth does not necessarily bring these countries backward, right? What we tell you, like what degrowth looks like in our side of the house, it's like stopping industrialization, right? It's like putting industrialization at halt, and putting industrialization at halt will not affect these developing countries. How? Mainly these developing countries mainly depend on things like agriculture, right? They mainly depend on farming agriculture. Putting industrialization on halt does not basically affect things like agriculture. So basically we believe that these developing countries, they won't be affected moving forward, right? So what you get from our side of the house, we tell you that the model which currently these guys are using is the one which is probably wrong, correct, panel. We tell you that we want to develop a sort of a model which is going to help us in the near future, right? We believe currently that the emissions which are being produced are basically contributed by few countries, which is the emissions which are effectively damaging the ozone layer, right? Are brought forth by few countries such as Russia, America, China, Germany, and France. But we believe with the same model of growth which is being used, all the developing countries, if they follow the same model, in 10 years to come, they will be releasing more emissions, right? So we want to change that model of growth. How are we going to be changing this model of growth? We are saying, let us take a time, right? Let us pull back a little bit. We put ideas so that we develop a better model which is sustainable later in the future. Because if we carry on with this model, right, panel, we believe that it is estimated that in 20 years to come, we are going to be having a population about 10 billion people, right? But with the model which is being used, we won't have raw materials, won't have the environment won't be enough to sustain those industries, right? We won't have raw materials to put into those industries, right? So that they provide food for our people, right? So we believe the model which they are currently using is flawed, right? And in the near future, it won't be able to sustain us and the rising populations which are there.
Point of information.
So, moving on, we tell you that there is a gap between these societies, right? And we believe by expanded growth, right, we are further increasing that gap, right? By increasing that gap, we are telling you that those people who are poor, they remain poorer, right? And those people who are rich, they get richer. And these guys are telling us if there is growth, right, people are going to afford these alternatives. We tell you no, panel. You look at America, right? You look at America back then and America now. Things were much cheaper then, but due to their growth, electric cars are expensive, right? Electric cars are going to be always being afforded by people who are always rich. And people who are always poor, they won't afford these alternatives, right? And we believe those people who are poor, they are the majority. So basically, you're not fixing anything. Panel, what you get from outside of the house, you come here and tell that we are stepping back, right? What you basically understand for our biology is the environment is always trying to fix itself, right? We as people are always trying to fix the damages which you already put back there, right? So what you're telling you, Tando comes in and tell you that there is the gap there which you are trying to fix these damages, right? And the gap is which you are damaging the environment is directly proportional in a way that we won't cover that. We are saying, let us pause, let us think of ways how we can fix whatever we've made. And also, the environment will catch up into fixing these damages which you have already put. For example, the rate at which you are planting trees and it's not the same as the rate at which you are damaging the ozone layer, right? The amount of carbon which is being emitted is not equal as the rate you are planting the trees. So you are saying it's going to give us a time to catch up and solve these problems which you already brought forth by what? By whatever we've done. And secondly, by pausing and halting industrialization, panel, we tell you that it gives us time to put our ways together and think of more innovative ways of moving forward, and it's going to foster innovativeness and industrialization, which is safer and more eco-friendly. With this, I've never been proud to oppose.
The government whip has spoken. Now, closing opposition whip, please take center stage.
Ladies and gentlemen, I would like first to address when did the degrowth movement or degrowth ideology came into existence. It came into existence around the 1970s. And does that make it realistic? No, gentlemen, it does not. It shows there's been a long lifespan where people have thought about it, but it has never been implemented because it is really unrealistic, gentlemen. First of all, I would like to thank my fellow colleagues by addressing how certain innovations can be made to address the degrowth movement. Certain innovations such as clean energy, such as electric vehicles, such as the use of green energy, as I mentioned earlier, like solar energy, has been used to actually address certain issues such as fossil fuels and other energy issues that can affect the climate. Moving on, there's also been the issue of cultural and societal beliefs. Through our culture and societal beliefs, the growth-orientated mindset is already embedded into us. And we think that and know that growth is the only way forward. By growth, we can actually bring forth innovative ideas. As each and every individual is mentioning, we cannot hold back. We cannot put industrialization at halt. And how? By putting industrialization at halt, as my fair colleague mentioned, it will not bring any innovative measures to solving climate change or climate issues, but it will actually make each and every process slower and slower and slower whilst people are suffering. As we know, as my other colleague mentioned, how economic development and economic growth are intertwined. This shows how each and everything within our society has a relationship with the other. If you actually affect or think about decreasing the economic growth within a country. It will affect each and every sector of our societies, be it economic or political or social, whereby individuals will struggle and become more poor. And I am going to quote one of these so-called capitalists that my fellow colleagues are trying to do away with. Mark Zuckerberg once said, degrowth would lead to decrease in innovation, which is necessary for solving global changes like climate change and poverty. Yes, it might bring forth certain issues such as climate. As he mentioned that degrowth would lead to decrease in innovation. Decrease in innovation, this actually shows how people would not have certain resources or ideas or anything that can actually be tangible and contribute to fighting these no, thank you. And fighting towards certain issues such as climate change, because they will not have the necessary equipment or the necessary money to fund these things. As you all know, in the act of trying to fight climate change, there has been money spent. And how can you solve climate change without any money in your pockets? You cannot. Also, focusing on degrowth, we cannot deprive people of their hard work. When someone works hard, they have to enjoy it. We cannot tell someone, because you have worked hard, you cannot do this. Instead, do something else. That is unfair, ladies and gentlemen. We live in a society where each and every person does what he or she pleases. So what we can make an alternative for them. Instead of doing away with these industrialization or other things that may bring about climatic catastrophes, we can focus on bringing new innovations, such as implementing electric things or electrical gadgets that can actually contribute to a more sustainable society. That can, please say thank you.
And that was the opposition whip stating his case and closing this debate. The motion has been stated. The speakers have debated, and now we'll leave this opportunity to the judges to deliberate. As they do, podium 2. Hello.
Hi.
How are you?
Fine, thanks. And how are you?
I'm great, thanks. So this degrowth movement, could you kindly maybe try and explain it to like a 5-year-old? Can you try? Just try. What it means to a 5-year-old.
So a 5-year-old degrowth movement will basically mean reduction in the population, reduction in production, reduction in consumption, reduction in the country's GDP, and it will also mean that reduction in the country's finances. Therefore, yeah, that's what it will mean.
Okay. So I'm the 5-year-old, maybe in this case. Yes. I'm just like in grade 1. What is GDP? You know? Yeah, go for it.
So GDP is the gross domestic income. So we're seeing what is the country making, what is the income of the country, and what is the income and what is the outcome. So what we're saying to say is what is the government spending and what is the government receiving.
All right.
In terms of money.
Okay. Podium 1, how are you? You're okay. That's all right. Could you just try and also do the same thing? Maybe try and explain the growth movement to a 5-year-old.
To a 5-year-old?
Yes, just try.
To a 5-year-old?
Yeah.
It's a bit difficult to explain because it's a complex matter.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe I'll explain it to a 13-year-old.
Okay,
yes.
Take it from there.
Okay, it simply means that we stop putting more effort into making money through harmful ways that harm our environment, and we try to strike a balance between being productive at the same time as also being sustainable in their life and protecting the environment.
Being productive and sustainable, I like that. Podium 4, hello.
Hello, hi.
How are you?
I'm all right.
Yeah, that's great. So Podium 1 said we shouldn't explain this to 5-year-olds, maybe shift it to like 13-year-olds. Try. How would you explain this topic to a 13-year-old?
I think degrowth basically will be means like reducing or shrinking economic production. Whereby economic production, we are focusing on producing goods like vehicles, mass production, like things that are mainly focused on industrialization, into shrinking or reducing that sector.
All right, that's okay. Thank you. Podium 3. Hello.
Hi.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm well, thanks. Please do the same thing. Just try and explain the degrowth movement to a 13-year-old.
Instead of eating six slices of bread, they should just eat 3, so that instead of buying 5 loaves of bread, we just buy 1.
Wow, I like that. This one would definitely go to the 5-year-old. So I knew a 5-year-old could understand. And this brings us to the end of this debate. This is the Speak and Solve initiative. My name is Miss Jones. From me and the rest of the crew behind the scenes, thank you so much for joining us. Until next time, goodbye.